Hello, all, and welcome to today's episode of Carbon Experts Live. My name is Abigail Mella. I'm the host of your show today. The show is produced by Click LCA to promote sustainable construction across manufacturing and the construction sectors, and we feature various industry experts. Today, we will learn about recent changes to the EU's product EPD regulations in a conversation featuring Christian Donat, the Managing Director of Eco Platform, and Panu Pasanen, the CEO of Click LCA. Before we get started, I'll give a quick nod to our production team, including April, Asha, and Thomas. Asha and Thomas are lifecycle assessment and environmental product declaration experts at Click LCA, and they're moderating today's live Q&A session, which will take place at the end of the show. However, you can already start asking questions that will be piped over to Christian and Panu at the end of the show. So just drop any questions you have about construction product regulations in the comments section of LinkedIn or Livestorm. I'll take a quick moment to introduce Christian, who has a very interesting history. He participated in the founding of Eco Platform in 2013 and has served as its managing director for over 10 years. Eco Platform is a European initiative to harmonize EPDs, or environmental product declarations, and to promote sustainable building practices via reliable product data via life cycle assessments. He was previously the CEO of the German Sustainable Building Council, and he is a civil engineer by education with a long-spanning career at Hochtief previously. Christian, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for hosting.
Yeah, great. Next up, I'll give a quick bio for Panu Pasanen, the CEO and sole founder of Click LCA, which is the world's leading software platform for lifecycle assessment and environmental product declaration in construction and manufacturing. Panu is a lifelong advocate for the decarbonization of the built environment. He's a lifecycle embodied carbon and lifecycle costing expert and entrepreneur, and he also works on green building credits. He collaborates with government bodies and large corporations to draft regulations and policies to achieve cost-effective and durable carbon reduction. And he's made it his life's work to scale carbon performance optimization with easy, automated, user-friendly, and affordable lifecycle assessment and environmental product declaration software. Panu, thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Great. Before the conversation begins, Christian and Panu will each present a few slides to tell you a bit about their work, their vision, and their top-level view of construction data in the market. This will provide the context that we need, the definitions, and the anchoring information required to have a productive conversation afterward. So, Christian, I will now turn the floor over to you. April, if you can clue the slides, and let's begin.
Thank you, and welcome to everybody. I don't know how many of you are out there and who you exactly are. And I don't know in how deep I need to introduce Eco Platform and this subject. But I am afraid that maybe not everybody knows Eco Platform. So to say some words about it, our purpose of Eco Platform is really to provide consistent and credible data. So the data from products you need for assessments of the environment or sustainability on a building level. And there's a lot to do to harmonize the data types, the verification itself, and to digitalize. And that's mainly what we are focusing on since 10 years. Next slide, please. To give you an idea about how Eco Platform is built up, you can be part of it if you are somewhat connected to digital data from products or environmental data from products. It started off really as an umbrella organization for EPD program operators to align what happened to be a Babel Tower confusion in the beginning, and partly still is. And it is open to all stakeholders around EPDs and LCA on that level. And we opened up beyond construction products, and we opened up beyond Europe even though we are focusing on Europe and the construction sector here and today. So members are EPD program operators, product manufacturers from industry associations, and all the experts around it, like tool providers, LCA consultants, and others. To mention, EcoPlatform is based in Brussels as an AASBL, which is a non-profit association. Next slide, please. So some achievements which make it more tangible what we're doing. There are rules that the EPD program operators are keeping. So all the program operators, which are under the umbrella of the EcoPlatform, keep the common rules, the core system, what we call our EcoPlatform standards. And then there are EPDs as a result from that. So the POs, the program operators, which are issuing EPDs, are publishing them, keeping the rules, and they are marked with the EPD logo. This is how you recognize them, and that these are achievements which we achieved already. Then there is the portal where we make data accessible for machines and users, manual users, by EcoPortal. Some more words around that a little bit later. This is still in a development stage, of course, but there you find all the data you need, or which is credible and which should be consistent. And of course, EcoPlatform as such is a network of experts. You find the experts around LCA and EPD more or less all on board here. With all the working groups that we have, we offer quite some expertise, information, and room for participation. Next slide, please. I'm setting the scene a little bit, touching the issues that we want to elaborate on, discuss with Panu later on, or allow questions on. But for a better understanding, because it is quite, if you're not into the details, it's quite complex and confusing what's going on there. It's very dynamic. So let me set the scene a little bit, knowing that for some of you, I will maybe now even generate new question marks, but that is wanted. We will come back to the question marks and hopefully with answers in the later show. So there is regulation coming up more and more. You see here a world map. It's not just the EU, but we are focusing on EU regulation. And there's only a little bit mentioned here, like taxonomy or the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. So what does that mean? If you go to the next slide, please. We are facing new regulation on building level, on product level, on corporate level, but it's not only regulation, there are private requirements as well. And of course, they go hand in hand often. There are rating schemes like LEED, BREEAM, DGNB bringing requirements on a building level, and that is reflected then in the tenders. If all goes well and keeps the order of evolution, then we would hopefully start with transparency. So let us measure first, and then we can maybe evaluate and assess a performance and eventually put benchmarks onto it. That would be the natural evolution. We all know that often enough we have benchmarks before we even have transparency. However, what does that mean for the methodology? The proof. So how do you prove something? You know that in some of the rating schemes, for example, you are just to deliver something like an EPD, and then you get a point. It's not really like that, but you know what I mean. And that doesn't help a lot. But there is a purpose behind creating data so that you eventually can have a building LCA. And a building LCA is really the life cycle assessment on a building level. And in a perfect world, we are hopefully entering soon, we'll have an LCA within a project, like in a BIM surrounding. And that all is putting all the requirements to the product data. Next slide, please, which looks a little bit more in detail. April, can you please give me the next slide? Thank you. So not going too much into the detail, but one interesting thought that you should bear in mind when you're thinking about a building LCA. If you're starting a design and construction project, then in the beginning, by nature, you do not have any specific products. So maybe an architect is doing an early design stage, a concept of a building. You have a specific place, you have a specific location, you have a specific purpose of the building, but you do not have any specific materials. So if you want to make sure that you, in the end, with a building, meet a certain requirement, maybe even a regulatory benchmark, you need to perform an early design building lifecycle assessment. And if you do this building LCA at an early stage, you don't have specific data from specific products. So you need something like generic data, product neutral data, or average data. And then over the time of the design, taking decisions, replacing one product after the other during the design stage and construction stage by a specific product, you end up in an as-built model. And then you can perform an as-built building LCA, and that is then the proof whether you keep the benchmarks. And that is for documentation. But that process from early design stage to as-built, as we all know, can take years until the last tenant of a building has decided for their bathroom tiles, for example, right? So in a project, that means to keep on track, and we are talking about liability as well. How do you make sure that we are keeping the benchmarks? We need to have software models of buildings that combine generic data, average data, and specific data from various data types. And that is to be made sure. So we need consistent data of different data types. Next slide, please. And that is really the last one and the most complex one. And this is hopefully setting the scene for later discussions. So you see on top of the slide here, the generic product data, the average product data, specific product data. And you see that different data types will serve the purpose or will deliver the data. For example, some of average and specific product data will be delivered by environmental product declarations, by the EPDs. But we're talking later on a lot about the construction product regulation, and that will define the declaration of performance and will make sure that environmental data will be delivered by the declaration of performance, so the DOP. And that will set a new compulsory data type as a must-have and will be our minimum standard. However, regulation is not covering it all. Regulation is here only covering this specific data type. So it's not covering generic data and average data. And there will be no project out there working, as I just explained in the previous slide, working just with specific data from the DOP. Plus, there will be other data which is not falling under the construction product regulation, which will not be delivered with the DOP data. So we need harmonization. We need to make sure that we have consistent data of all data types that we need to have a proper design and construction building process. And for that, you see here different levels. There's data type coordination, for example, the DOP data by the construction product regulation, the implementation of verification or validation, data validation, and the implementation into the market. That is something for the group of notified bodies, whereas for the other data types like EPD and generic data, we'll have the eco platform performing this data type harmonization. But moreover, and that is nothing the EU can do for us, so the EU Commission or whoever can do for us, we need a high-level harmonization, making really sure that we have consistent data, that of all data types, that we have alignment with out of Europe or EU data, that we take care for additional data and development, the dynamic development of new data, that we provide data in a consistent data quality and format even during the next years to be chaotic in the transition from this new CPR until it's already established. So there is enough to do, and that is really the new role for Eco Platform. And with this, I hand over to Panu, I guess, who plays a important role within Eco Platform then now too.
Thanks. So hello everybody. So Panu Pasanen, CEO and founder of One Click LCA, talking about the same topic in a bit more possibly hands-on point of view. So One-Click LCA is a software company. What we do is we help businesses on more on the supply side, but also on the demand side to transform their actions and their business data and their designs and manufacturing data into sustainability results in the format that the customers need. So it can be an EPD, it can be an LCA, it can be a circularity statement, it can be also biodiversity assessment, lifecycle costing, and such things, right? And the whole thing runs with automation at the heart and a big pool of data, obviously, that is fueling the automation. So that's what we do. Transform activity data and business data into sustainability results and allow you to improve quickly on various sustainability metrics. Next, please. And this LCA topic is, well, not the easiest thing you generally face in construction or manufacturing either. So there are really four major barriers in the industry, and time and again we have surveyed our customers, and this has been pretty stable across actually more than half a decade now. Like, so we have four barriers which stay there, which continue to remain barriers, and we just chip away at them. The first barrier is data. It's data gaps, data inconsistency, and data fragmentation. Some of the themes, what Christian mentioned, we tackle it a bit differently. So we work through that to make sure things are homogeneous. We also provide generic data and such like to be sure that you can work with whatever you need. Complexity is another very critical thing. So we do modular tools which give you let's say a sandbox where you do your work within the parameters that you're supposed to do it in. So if you pursue compliance with a certain standard, for example, you only can do the things what that standard allows you. Workload, obviously very much connected with automation. So automation is not a cure-all, but it's definitely a cure-all for workload reductions. And lastly, the standards fragmentation. So EU is, well, over 24 countries, and today we have many national standards. Some of them will potentially go away with the introduction of CPR, but there's untold standards in all the markets to which European companies export to. And of course, if you import to Europe, then you'll be subject to the European standards, either at the carbon border adjustment mechanism already, or if not, then on the CPR level or other local regulations. So there's a bunch of stuff to deal with. Next, please. And then if we look at this data question from a design process point of view. So if you are designing a project, or if you're thinking of commissioning a design for a project, you don't start thinking about EPDs, as Christian said. You think about what you should be doing and how should you steer your project, right? So in One-Click LCA side, we provide tools for pre-project phases, where you think about not even at products, but where you think of construction systems. So, should I do cast in place concrete? Should I do precast? Should I do cast in place with bubble deck? Should I do a slim floor? What can I do? All these different options. So it's very far from specific product choices. And there we use generic data at systems level, and then we move forward to product type generic data, and then to manufacturer data. Sometimes to project specific data too, when you do a specific solution for a specific project. And this is how we connect the data to the design workflow and to the delivery of projects to the customers, so that you can have the best possible level of precision, but not more. Because if you haven't committed to something, you shouldn't be calculating with it in the early phase. Next, please. Then I did mention a few barriers on LCA. I just elaborate a bit more on the complexity and the workload aspects of EPDs. And according to Stockholm Institute of Environmental Economics, creating EPDs costs on the average 15 grand and takes 4 to 6 months. Like, in the most of the responses. And where this cost is coming from, it's really coming from the fact that you have to work a lot with data yourself. You have to model the LCA, you have to document EPDs, and you have to write reports. But those are just the preliminary stages, because EPD is defined by third-party verification, and that obviously requires you to get somebody who has time to check it and who's qualified to check it. And if you don't get a person at the right time, your process stops. And until you get it signed off, you're not going to publish, right? So how we approach this with Click LCA is that we have developed very substantial amount of automation from beginning to end to support all of this, to minimize the scope of errors. We have been able to reduce scope of errors by over 70% already. And we have a very structured process, which is also allowing, for people who are not working with LCA as long as me and Christian, to do this work reliably. Like, you can just get on board and follow the steps. And if you color outside the lines, will catch you, and then you don't fall. And that's the way we go about trying to ensure that you can do high quality work without being yet, world-class professional in LCA. Then you can be one in a couple of years. Next, please. And yeah, obviously we are a software company, so we do construction and manufacturing LCA software. It's a pretty nice one, but that you hopefully knew. 180 people, and software is used in 170 countries, and more data points there, but I'll go light on that, and I think we can go into the discussion. Thanks.
Great. Thank you both so much. Incredibly interesting presentations for both of you, and thank you for providing that anchoring information for the conversation ahead. So the first question I have for the two of you, and just feel free to field this however you like, is what are the latest changes for building regulations at the EU level?
Well, if I start, so energy performance for buildings directive revision, and it's going to require all the large buildings, so over 1,000 square meter, to do an LCA by 28, and all buildings by 2030, and that's going to be part of then the energy regulations framework. Short version, Christian.
Yeah, and underlining that, so the EPBD, if we're talking about the EPBD, then it's what Panu just mentioned, the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. And it is going beyond energy. So in the name there was energy, but now we're talking about decarbonization as well. It is including the whole life cycle. And I guess we should mention that there's other regulation than the EPBD, like the taxonomy is taking on the whole life cycle as well, and that is mainly relevant for investors, I would say, and not to forget about regulation like the CSRD, which is regulating then the ESG reporting, and that has an impact as well on a corporate level, about buildings in use, about the supply chain, and I think, Panu, I would like to hear your opinion on that. To me, this is only the regulation, but to me, it's a game changer. There will be a lot of so-called private requirements that will pop up as soon as we have regulation, and that will flank the regulation itself.
Yeah, quite possibly. So, I'm just not sure how much room they have left, because in a comprehensively regulated landscape like the private regulations, they can't do so much more. So the value drivers change a bit. So it becomes more value, becomes less a certification or such, but it becomes more the actual measured performance. And from a business model point of view, the paid certifications could have to struggle a bit to figure out how they go about it. But so what's interesting about these regulations is that if you look at the EPBD taxonomy and CSRD, so EPBD looks at energy and life cycle carbon, and already very good because it's an energy regulation at heart. But then if we go to taxonomy, we have circularity, and we also have nominally, let's say, biodiversity. I mean, biodiversity accounting is not really in there, but CSRD has both of these, and in addition, it has biodiversity as an actual object of reporting and measurement, obviously only for businesses which are subject to the corporate sustainability reporting directive, so large companies. But I think that's quite interesting because starting from energy life cycle emissions get into it, and then in these broader regulations, they have a couple of other facets. So let's say the coverage of the different sustainability objectives becomes broader, whether they are becoming more ambitious at the same time, not all, but the trend is pretty good.
Great, thank you, Panu. The next question I have for you both is, what is the role of product data in sustainable design, and how is it used?
Well, maybe I start this time. I would say multiple purposes. So I think of all the multiple requirements. We just touched some of them that are coming up with maybe benchmarks or whatever kind of requirements. And there are multiple methodologies, like multiple different types of software tools and methods to comply and to document and to make your proof. So I think we need data in a way, in a structured way, which is meeting all the different purposes. And I think we're touching later on this CPR, the Construction Product Regulation, helping us here to really identify data and indicators which can then be used, even machine readable. And I think that is something very important here. So yeah, products affect the environmental performance of a building very much. So we need product data, and we need to have it in a feasible and usable way.
So yeah, if I continue from that, so if you put yourselves into, let's say, into the shoes of an architect, right, or engineer or construction manager, everybody knows what they are buying. They will be buying the same kind of stuff. Like you need a structural solution, you buy a structural solution. How you specify it is different, right? As an architect or engineer, you can also think about how you design the whole system. So the design can be shaped by understanding what's the impact of the products. And it starts from fairly basic things like understanding what are the material differences between different types of products and different types of systems, and what does good look like. So if you know that for a certain site you need to work with precast, so then the question is, what does a good precast solution look like from decarbonization point of view, and how do I get that, and who can give it to me? And then you try to figure out how you get it into your design. Are you able to get it for your site? And are you able to get your client to, sign off on it? Because it could also not be very competitive. Let's say if you are needing a product which is half the carbon of the market, it's not necessarily going to be that many suppliers for that. Is your end customer going to be okay with that? Because potentially, they might be concerned about the price. But a lot of it starts with understanding the feasibility. But so once you understand the feasibility and what good looks like, then it's really a question of comparison. And there we go into the comparability, which is obviously what Christian talked about in the beginning. And you can go wrong in there for sure. But the more important thing is that you can go right. And you can go right way more often than you can go wrong. So, I mean, that's kind of, I think, the thing. So the data is workable. It's not perfect. And even though you cannot always compare, if you know what you're doing or you understand how to structure the data, you can actually make way better decisions than without using the data. And I would just like say from a philosophical point of view, not to be afraid of using data to make decisions, even if it's not perfect, because we just need to do 90% of the time better decisions. If we do 10% of the time bad decisions, we'll win, right? And that's kind of how to look at it from a pragmatic point of view.
And if I may add a last sentence on that one, and to say it drastically, shit in, shit out. So if we are to improve the buildings, then we need good data, reliable data and consistent data. and I think it was often underestimated. So we're thinking about rules and benchmarks on building level, but it got long time forgotten that you have a hen-egg problem. You need the data first. And this is now finally touched, and maybe that's a good transition, good bridge to the next question.
Great. Yeah. So the next question for both of you is, what are the changes for construction product regulation at the EU level?
Should I start, Panu?
Yeah, go ahead.
First of all, environmental data becomes compulsory. So you need to provide, for all manufacturers that fall under the construction product regulation, they need to provide the environmental data. Because we have the construction product regulation, and that is requesting for it, to say it easy. And that is mainly a good thing, because the construction product regulation defines a set of indicators according, by the way, to the EPD standards, which we are following already. And it makes them compulsory, and member states are to follow. So member states can not then in future on building level, for example, for a building code or for whatever reporting legislation, cannot request for other data than delivered by the DOP, by delivered under the CPR, under the construction product regulation. So it is really a big step forward in harmonization, which is what I would say, yeah, positive. And it is changing the way we verify the data, of course.
So literally, like anybody in France, Germany, Netherlands listening, Belgium, you cannot have your own rules anymore. So throw away the rule books. I mean, like message from Christian. But that's kind of the key here, because it's extremely anti-competitive market. And I mean, I do understand if 100% of your voters are located in your country, that's kind of how democracy works. So the foreign companies, they don't vote for you. And, like then you don't want them to be taking the money from for your buyers, and it's very anti-competitive. Like in France, to sell, you have to have an EPD in the French system, which is not an open system. It's supposed to be an open system, but de facto, well, I mean, I have an opinion on it. Netherlands, the same. Belgium, broadly comparable, and Germany also similar, except the limitations are structured in a different way. So that's kind of a problem from competitiveness point of view. And obviously, construction product regulation and internal market regulation, which is aiming to ensure that there's going to be a competitive market for construction products. And now there's going to be a competitive market for sustainable construction products. Because if you have a better product, you can prove it in the same way in every EU member state. And I think that's a huge win from sustainability point of view. I mean, if you are a small company, you cannot like create 5 times the certifications just to be able to prove that you have a sustainable product. It's not going to work. And that's how it is today. My view on that is that it's wrong. But yeah, I'm of course a market-oriented person. But yeah, Christian, what do you think about this? What will the member states actually do?
What the member states will do?
Yeah, actually do, because it's not like happening. This is not happening like today. It's happening towards the second half of the decade.
They will be forced to. So let's take the example of the French decree. So the law from, was it 2020, I guess, enforced, which is in fact on the building level requiring you to deliver or to only have products we deliver in EPD in a very French way. So you need a French verifier and so on. So that will not stand. At the moment, the CPR comes into effect or will be enforced. That is not allowed anymore. And this is exactly how the EU is enforcing this. This is overcoming the problems of the different data silos or all the different requirements. And that is only on construction product level, but we have the different requirements on building level, on corporate level, and so on. So if you sum up that and multiply that, so all the different legislation types, and you multiply it by all the different EU member states, then that is already a big step in harmonization. So I like it. I like that part. And I
So
dislike that we're open up a flank for the complementary data, as I said, which is not regulated, but that's what we are working on.
Yeah. And what do you think? France is hosting with UNEP this Building and Construction Global
In
Summit
Paris.
in Paris in 2 weeks. Do you think they will announce that we are removing competitive barriers already ahead of time, or do you think they will stick to them as long as they can?
I have no idea, to be honest.
All right.
I don't expect anything. The whole registration process and procedures of that particular event were so complicated and intransparent that I don't expect anything. So if the conference is as intransparent as the registration process for it, then I can't expect anything. I don't know.
All right, we'll see.
Okay. On a related note, the next question for the two of you is, who do the changes affect, and when must these changes be adopted?
So maybe I start for a change. So construction product regulation enters in force through harmonized standards, and there are some categories of products which are obviously construction products, and some products which are sort of ancillary products, which are like you might or might not think of as construction products, like fireplaces or that kind of things. And for all of those things, there are harmonized standards. And once the CPR is executed and enters in force, then all the standardization groups for the harmonized standards have to get their standards aligned with the new requirements, and they have no right to, derogate from them, but they may add some things within the allowable parameters. And so the first people to move will be the standardization groups, and thereafter it's going to be the industry. So that would be the the short version. But Christian, maybe you take it from there.
To answer with one word, manufacturers. So who do the changes affect? Who will be affected? First of all, manufacturers will be affected. And member states, of course, but they know already and they had their say. But manufacturers will be affected on all their helping hands. And I think we have a lot of you here probably as participants in this webinar, which are the helping hands around it. That will change, and it is so complex, this transition, and it will be implemented gradually. So I think we can say that in 2026 that can be expected. It's of course not in our hands, Panu, right? But I expect from 2026, probably later 2026 on, it will be enforced, and then product category after product category, because we need cited standards. The Commission has to cite the standards. So we need the industry, so product TCs, the technical committees of CEN, to deliver a solution. If not, there may be delegated acts. However, that is something Commission decides, and then product category after product category will have a cited standard which is needed to apply the enforced regulation. So I hope that was comprehensive enough. But from 2026 on, you can expect that there is regulation.
Great. So considering these changes, what will this mean for sustainability data? What is your outlook here?
So sustainability data is must-have. That's clear. And sustainability data is not only to be delivered to participate in the market, but will be subject to liability issues. As Panu mentioned, there is a performance or competition on environmental performance level, and that is new. And since we're expecting, I would say, the next 5 to 10 years, there will be a lot of chaos, but there will be court cases as well. So if the data is not correct, if it has not been verified the right way, if it was not done the right way, if it was not provided, if it was communicated in the wrong way, there's a lot to be considered. And I think, yeah, the must-have and the liability issue, these are the critical things.
Yeah, it's yeah, fair summary. Like, and like there's already a bunch of court cases. There's like two kinds actually. So one of them is when somebody is intentionally misleading, and the other is when companies have other market problems, and for example, they are unhappy with each other because of some other reason, and then they pick up on anything they can find. And this kind of behavior, of course, is not limited to EPDs or anything like, or environmental data. It's a general question, but like on a more substantial level, I think the biggest change CPR will bring is that the EPDs as such, they don't necessarily cease to exist, but the way they are governed for regulatory purposes changes pretty substantially. So in the way that for the regulations, the expected form of regulation is that you need to have a notified body signed off the verification of the sustainability data, and that obviously changes a lot how the market operates. And yeah, I think obviously it's not cost neutral at all, but it does tie in very well with the notion of liability questions, because when you have such considerations, you want to be sure as a regulator that the work is done in the correct way.
And maybe we've talked at a high and mid-level, and then really drilling down to a very sort of practical level. How can these regulatory changes be tackled in a day-to-day sort of working way?
Automation is key. Panu, you mentioned it earlier already. So if we are thinking about the amount of data, and what we haven't mentioned is the worst case scenario. So you may not, different from the EPD approach at the moment, you may not just communicate an average, but manufacturers will be forced to mention the worst case scenario of their data, because that is the rule for the DOP, so the declaration of your performance. You may not declare a performance which is better than the product really is. And that means that in the world as it is right now, you produce data. I would call it a static data provision. You have a product and you have your data for that product, like the data sheet. You know, it's ready made. But in future, thinking about different production plants, different supply chain streams, different raw materials used for different production charges. I think there is a big variety in your data on environmental purposes. And if you do not find a proper way of a smart data management within a manufacturer's or within a company manufacturing, and the data automation, meaning automatic data generation, including EPD data or DOP data, you will be lost. You will have too much effort, or you will be forced to provide non-competitive data. It will be only worst case data, which is not very favorable. And I think tool verification is something really critical here. So, for example, you're working for years with the Click LCA already, Panu, on tools, and we're working on the tool verification guidelines dramatically within Eco Platform, which is really key to deliver or to trust the different tools that are existing, so that you really can trust the data and that you save the efforts, as Panu said earlier, for manual data production and then verification. And we don't even have the resources to do so for 400,000 manufacturers that are affected with all their products. It's common sense that we need automation.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe adding two things to that. So the just first is skill gaps. It's very unlikely that or most businesses, they are not staffed to the level with people with LCA skills that's needed. So getting some education is a good idea, because it's very difficult to come up with a good plan to tackle something you don't understand, and sure, you can ask Deloitte to write you a plan, but they write you a plan and they go, and guess what? Then you're stuck with that plan that you don't understand. So getting education, happy to inform that One Click LCA Academy trains you, well, and anybody in the world for free. I don't know when we have the next EPD bootcamp, but a couple of them in a year. So if you want to learn more, it's a week-long training. It doesn't cost you a penny.
It's next week, by the way.
Next week? Oh, well, great. Okay, so Monday, yeah, good. And second is thinking about this data structure for your automation, because how you approach automation is fundamentally dependent on your business line. So if you just make bits of metal which have different mass, it's not like a really automation problem, it's a multiplication problem. But most businesses are not like that. So thinking about how you can productize your product families into something that is effectively can be subjected to automation can be quite important. And working with maybe use SAP for product lifecycle management, maybe use Windchill or whatnot. So thinking about what data sources you have in your business that could be fueling the automation. So I think that's quite critical, because we cannot have human hands on it most of the time from cost perspective. Maybe that's what I would add to what Christian said.
Great. Thank you both so much. We will have a segment of the program for live questions from the audience. So all of you out there dialing in from Livestorm or LinkedIn, please go ahead and drop any questions that you might have in the chat, and these will be piped over to Christian and to Panu. And April, if you would go ahead and pull up a couple of slides. Before the Q&A begins, I would love to give you the opportunity to learn a bit more about Eco Platform and also One Click LCA. So next slide. Thanks. So I hope all of you out there are familiar with QR codes, but I'll explain it in a moment. But first, I'd like to say that Eco Platform coordinates the development and provision of credible and scientifically correct data from products. And Eco Platform is working to mainstream lifecycle assessment for buildings and infrastructure projects through reliable, affordable, and effective product data. And to learn more about Eco Platform, you can scan the QR code here. It's pretty simple. So you'll just pick up your mobile phone and then open your camera app, and you'll hold that in front of the QR code that you see on screen, and a link will pop up, and that directs you to Eco Platform. They're doing amazing things, so do scan the QR code and go check them out. And next slide, thank you, April. And then finally, I'll give you a quick chance to learn more about One Click LCA. So go ahead and scan the QR code that you see here, or our moderators, Asha and Thomas, can drop a link for you in the chat. But One Click LCA is working to decarbonize construction and manufacturing with its intuitive cloud-based software to conduct life cycle assessment, and also to generate environmental product declarations at scale. And One Click LCA is working to help you differentiate your business with a sustainability edge, to grow your business by winning more clients and more projects, to ensure compliance, and also to reduce costs via automation. So scan the QR code and do check out One Click LCA. And the next slide, I think, will just segue into the live Q&A with Christian and Panu. Again, if you have any last-minute questions, don't be shy. This is your chance to ask them, and Asha and Thomas will pipe them over. All right, we've got our first question in. So, Will this regulation affect manufacturers outside the EU that import their products into the EU? Thank you. That's a great question.
Oh, it's a simple one. Yes.
Elaborate?
And
It
I'll
affects
add,
everyone.
the other way around. And the other way around, no. But other states are working on regulation. Works on regulation as well. The US EPA, for example.
Just to
But leave it.
disambiguate the yes and no, so it's an affirmative yes if it's a product subject to construction product regulation. So it doesn't matter where it's made. Like if you want to bring it to the internal market, then it's affecting it. So if it's subject to construction product regulation, then just with that understanding that there are also products which are not.
Okay.
And as long as we are maybe waiting for other questions, I would like to use the chance and invite everybody who's not yet connected to EcoPlatform. It should really be interesting for most of you to participate. There's a lot of information going on. That you have your say, you participate in the working groups, a lot to learn. So please, in case you are interested and want to learn more, visit our homepage or give me a call. Try to arrange a call with me, and I'll let you know more. But we have the next question.
Yeah, nice. This is from Maximilian. Which sectors will the EU DOP apply to? Will it apply to cement or steel manufacturers?
Yes. So the construction product regulation is a regulation which regulates the CE marking. So you get your CE marking only if you comply with the CPR, so the construction product regulation. And for that, you need to declare the performance of your products. And this, so what products do fall under the CPR? These are the products for construction products as defined as construction product, which have a harmonized Euronorm, so a HAN standard. And for those who do not have, there's EIOTA, probably you know the technical assessment bodies, and there are EAD, so European Assessment Documentation, which are somehow replacing then the cited standard under a HAN standard. But there are other products which are built in construction, like MEP products, cables and wires, and so, which are not construction products, and they could fall under the ESPR. And there will be maybe an EF method for it. So talking a little bit strange now, but they're not directly affected by the CPR.
What's also maybe worth noting that there are also types of steel and steel that is not used for construction as construction products. So that steel manufacturing is not like if you put it in your car, no construction product regulation.
And same applies maybe for cement.
Yeah,
if you build a boat,
less of cement in cars and boats for sure.
Great. This is from Shadwa. Would all the new upcoming EPDs be machine readable, or would they still depend on the program operator?
That's a word disambiguating, because these two things are not mutually exclusive. Like maybe Christian can answer the rest of it, but you can definitely have machine readable EPDs depending on a program operator.
Well, just to clarify a little bit, we're in the context of the CPR talking about DOP. So the EPD part of the DOP, it's a part of the DOP, right? The environmental information, it will be integrated in the DOP, in the declaration of performance of your product. For this, there are plans to by the Commission, not only for construction products but for all products, to have a digital product passport system, and that should be established in 2026. So they're working on that, and that is aiming for making DOPs machine readable. And we with EcoPlatform are working on that anyway, in parallel with the EcoPortal, where we are providing all the data in a machine readable way.
Great. Next question. What environmental data / impact indicators must be reported in the DOP? From Laurence.
Very interesting question. And that's something we somehow skipped. And so I'm happy for that question. There was a big discussion what should be mandatory directly from the EU. And at the moment, it looks as if there are only the 4 global warming potential indicators, and they will become mandatory right away. So you have to declare them. However, 4 years after enforcement of the mandatory declaration of the GWP indicators, there will be the declaration of core indicators becoming mandatory, and then we will talk about mandatory declaration of all LCA indicators. So that will come gradually. However, as we all know, if you're performing an LCA for your product to generate an EPD, you can get all the indicators more or less without any additional effort. And even if you're not obliged to communicate all indicators, it makes big sense to communicate them all and to declare them all. You cannot use them if you do not declare them with the DOP. Means if you declare only the mandatory indicators, then you say that all the other indicators are NPD. That means more or less that you can't declare them for whatever reason, and that means you can't declare them or use them outside of the DOP either. It's not possible. It's forbidden. So since there are rating schemes or single, maybe Amazon asking for a certain indicator, you may want to declare it to participate in projects like that. So you would for sure put them on the list. Plus, member states can extend the list of the global warming potential indicators within the scope of the defined LCA indicators.
So in a short, all the EN 15804 indicators except optional ones would be the short answer. Do we have a last question, Abigail?
I believe so. April's piping that over. Unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions. We were flooded with questions. I can sense this is a very important topic to many of you. The final question is from Nabil. Could you elaborate on the PCR harmonization, as this will be very important? Will Eco Platform play a key role here?
Yes. We started working with a task group, a set up task group on PCR guidelines. We think, of course, by the Commission and with the product TCs, we'll have CPCRs worked on from a Commission level anyway. But at the moment, we have different PCRs in different parts of the world. And we try to align that not only within the EU, but even beyond. So I talked about the EPA in the United States. We're reaching out to them. So we really want to have something like a PCR toolkit that we are now working on, so that we can make sure that PCRs, even if we have different ones, are matching or harmonized, are aligned in some way.
So what's important to understand here is that we have multiple PCRs which can be, out of sync and whatnot, up to the point when construction product regulation becomes mandatory, after which those PCRs are not valid. It's going to be the ones which are created by harmonized standards. So we have 2 phases of development here, and currently we are in the pre-regulatory phase, and the work Eco Platform is doing is quite important in that phase. But after that, it's going to be driven by the Brussels, let's say. I think that's a wrap.
All right, thank you both so much. We have 2 more slides to wrap everything up. I wanted to let you know that MEP embodied carbon matters. It contributes up to 50% of embodied carbon in commercial buildings and up to 50% of embodied carbon in retrofits over the lifetime of a building. I am inviting all of you here to join an MEP embodied carbon conversation with Anastasia Milona, the technical director at SIPSI, and Panu CEO at One Click LCA, for a discussion about the data behind MEP embodied carbon, what you can do about it in your day-to-day and strategic work, and also how to advocate for MEP carbon reduction with your market stakeholders. Final slide, April. Thank you. As ever, we're always very happy to hear from you. If you'd like to contact us, just go to oneclicklca.com. Or if you want to know more about our construction and manufacturing software, just write us directly at sales@oneclicklca.com. You can find some links in the chat. And thank you all so much for being with us today. And special thanks to Christian Donat. It was an absolute pleasure to hear from you. And Panu, thank you so much for your participation. Thank you, guys.
Excellent. Thanks a lot.
I'm thanking you for really hosting that in such a professional way. I liked it. Great.